Great. Good afternoon, everyone. And we are all delighted to be here amongst all of you. I'll start by telling a quick short story. I was brave enough to fly Air India to New York recently. And when it was lunchtime, their hostess came to me and said, "Sir, would you like to have some lunch?" And I said, "What are my options?" She said, "Yes or no." Okay. So same is the case with Gen AI. It's not an option. If you don't adopt it, you will remain hungry, and the hunger pangs will keep bothering you throughout. So amongst all the industries, generally my belief is that banking and financial services has been the biggest spenders on tech, and Gen AI being hugely tech-driven, although it is the lines between tech and business are blurring. This industry is, I think, key to leading the way forward on this. So without further ado, we'll kind of jump into this. And I'd like to start, Sudish, probably with you. Tell us a bit about how you see this whole Gen AI adoption accelerating. What functions are really adopting this in your firm and in your experience?
Yeah, so Sandeep, again, pleasure to be here and thank you for having me. Before I get to the question that you asked, a quick couple of things. This is the first time I'm on a panel where I qualify as a diversity candidate because all of them have a common background of being in the same company at some point in time and I don't, right? That's the first time that's happened to me. The second is I'm glad that these chairs are not very comfortable because on the topic of AI, you can never get comfortable and you can never get into a comfort zone. However, coming back to your story, and I was just listening to the session before this, right? If we go back, and I'm going to say months, right? Because in the journey of AI, it's about months, it's not about years anymore. It's perhaps about weeks, and that's the future. We talked about LLM being the future. We talked about Gen AI being the future. We talked about agentic AI being the future. If we did this summit 3 months from now, I don't know what will be the next thing that will come up, and we'll say that's the future, right? But that said, I think, and we had a good conversation just before this, right? And some of this is I'm learning as much as everybody else is, right? So in our organization, some of the things where I've seen Gen AI being applied, I've seen that in the credit space. I've seen that being applied quite powerfully in terms of getting the right insight, trying to identify what decisions do we need to make. I've seen that get applied in the legal space, right? When you have to go through millions and millions of pages of transcripts, etc., and try to kind of form an opinion. That's something, contracts, right, life cycles, I've seen that getting applied there. The most common ones that I've seen is in the customer service space, right, be it insights or be it call centers, etc., where there's very profound and powerful application of different forms of Gen AI. Nilesh, I think, was talking about a very interesting experience around when you just think about operations and when you think of it in the context of standard operating procedures and trying to make sense of standard operating procedures. Those are some of the things which we may not have ever thought about earlier, but we are trying to take advantage of that. In our example, we have now gone to the next level to say we will use those insights to figure out what process variances exist, right? How do we manage our risks and trying to get to that next level, right? So those are some of the very exciting applications that I see, right? Yeah. In terms of within our organization, but broadly I hear about it because we had a great conversation on some of these topics just when we were speaking outside of this.
That's amazing, Sudish. So, very clear from what you have said that this seems to be all pervasive. There isn't any aspect of banking which is not being touched by it. So, the question which comes to my mind, and Nilesh, if you could speak to it a bit, is if this is going to be all pervasive, then what are the cultural shifts we need to bring about in the organization?
I think first off, thanks for having me in this panel. I mean, it's awesome to kind of see 3-4 alumni from our past organization. Sudish, it's always good to have a conversation with Sudish. But let me put it like this to respond to your question, Sandeep. I think it's 2 approaches that we need to kind of think about, and they are summarized in 2 words. One is democratization and the other is evangelization. So we are always going to have, generative AI is actually going to become all pervasive if it has not already become this. Yeah. So to embrace that and to not necessarily live in denial of that and make it something special which a bunch of folks in white lab coats are going to handle, right? I think is the right approach to take, to make it something which everyone can embrace and interpret to kind of serve their own purpose and understand what it means for them in their roles, in their lives, right? Just as we would with, you know, Copilot or whatever have you on our mobile phones, right? Yeah. So that's one element of it. And from that will come, I don't know, 10,000 potential use cases which might then cluster together to kind of form groups and domains within themselves. But then when it comes to topics of governing that and making sure that it does not kind of, you know, adversely mushroom out and create operational risk for the organization, and making sure that the right expertise is driven and that when people need help, they have the experts to tap into, those will be the evangelist roles that we will have to create. Those will be the roles which will kind of highlight those big ticket, you know, critical problem, you know, critical to kind of do this now type of business opportunity problems to which we will apply generative AI. I think both of these approaches will need to coexist in order to kind of really ensure that an organization becomes Gen AI friendly in the future, if I were to put it like that.
So I love those two words, democratization and evangelization.
Yeah. And Sandeep, if I can
please
chip in, and that resonates very well. Just as an example on your topic of democratization, right? We are on this journey of democratization as well, right? Which is, we are calling it AI for everyone, right? And we are trying to get our employees and our colleagues go through an immersive process. It's fascinating to see that a significant part of our organization actually has done some kind of basic AI learning. They are now empowered to create their own agents to make their own work a little better, create a little bit more capacity, be a little bit more effective, right? The number of agents that they have built is 5 times the number of people we have in what we call our AI hub, right? And the number of agents that they have created is significantly more than what people in the AI hub have created, right? So those are some of the most interesting aspects of how this is working. But again, I think there's another point to it, which is the whole culture of innovation, right? Because I think we should not look at AI and innovation in isolation. I think the two go together, right? Because at the heart of it, we are trying to innovate our business, right? And to innovate our business, whether it is a form of AI or another form of AI, the goal and the objective is to be, how do you take your business forward, right? And you can take your business forward by being more effective in how you run your business, or identifying new opportunities to serve your clients, right? And that's where I think those old concepts of fail fast, learn, move on, I think is very pervasive. I think I heard the previous speaker talk about think big, start small, right? But those are some of the fundamentals of bringing innovation and AI together.
Yeah. So it's,
I'll just add to what Sudish said. AI shouldn't be seen in isolation. It's not an algorithm which is sitting on its own. It should be seen as a part of a broader ecosystem. So what are you trying to do with AI? Basically, you're trying to reduce the cognitive load on your employees, on your workforce, and also on your client. There are certain decisions which AI is making for you, which you were earlier scratching your brain for. I think we need to move away from that, and that's the cultural shift which we'll see the industry go through.
Yeah. Well said, Swayta.
Also, I wanted to add that we talk about this evolution of new roles. I also have another perspective to that. So the roles that exist today did not exist yesterday. So I remember this famous quote which says, or the book that says, what got you here won't get you there, right? So I think in this era, what is very, very important is we don't know what is going to be there tomorrow. So adaptability, flexibility is one of the main skills. I feel that, you know, the roles today are very different from the roles that were yesterday. The roles tomorrow will be very different from the roles we have today. But if we have the ability and the mindset to learn, unlearn, and know that nothing will be fixed, perhaps we will be able to sail it through, right?
Yep. No, well said. And, you know, I'm a bit scared seeing how agents are proliferating the workspace. And at this rate, I think there'll be a new role. We'll need an HR manager for agents, right, to regulate them better. And, you know, talking of regulation, Nilesh, I'll come back to you. You come from a European bank, and generally the belief is that the European regulator is even stronger and intrusive as compared to the American or Indian regulators. So from a regulatory perspective, what are you seeing are the impediments to implementing Gen AI?
I wouldn't wouldn't call it an impediment, but I think one of the very important milestones on the journey that we are going to have to take with our regulators, no matter which jurisdiction we are talking about, right, is a journey of collective discovery and common comprehension, right? When there is a discord in comprehension or a discord in understanding of any new technology, be it something as simple as macros, because it's not so long ago that we were all dealing with user-developed application lifecycle management and how do you demise them and figure out exactly what their end state is going to be and the risk involved in doing that, right? Regulators took note of that as well, didn't they? Now, this is, in my opinion, a much more powerful, potent version of that line of thought, right? Which we are going to have to kind of almost, and we were discussing this earlier on, that we should take that bull by the horns and actually make sure that we lean into that conversation, you know, inform our regulators and work with them to come up with regulation which does not choke business, but at the same time puts in place good belts and braces to protect our customers, which is in our interest as well, right? The design of policies, for example, internal to organizations, but also, you know, market-wide policies, right? Legislation. These all eventually will require our inputs because we are at the front end of this. We are at the sort of front line of this.
Sure.
And so then the regulators and us, we have to be in partnership on this. It cannot be one versus the other or at loggerheads, right? So that's sort of the approach that I'm seeing a lot of the organizations thinking about taking. It's early days yet. So I think we're getting to that sort of point in time.
Great. And Pancham, coming to you, you know, your organization, you service other financial institutions. And therefore, there is one more layer of complexity which comes in from a regulatory perspective. So shed some light on how you kind of encounter this.
So as an organization and as a value-added partner to our clients, we always tell them to have a very slow and considerate approach towards adoption of AI and any automation. Because the guardrails, what Nilesh is also talking about, haven't been put in place as of now. So as an organization, we are a signatory to the EU AI Act and Pact. So we are working with the regulators to actually form guidance around as to how the usage of AI should be. We are also participating in the 𝗥Me market forum in terms of, again, putting guardrails and coming up with things. So what we understand is that there will be a global mosaic of regulations which will govern data automation and, you know, all the AI tooling which is coming through. So with the gentlemen have just said that, you know, we work closely with the regulators to form or be participant in the policy making because you don't want to be the one where things go wrong and you don't know what to look at. We work closely with them.
Swayta, in your role, you kind of span multiple markets. So do you see a difference between regulatory adoption from region to region?
Yeah, region to region and process to process as well. So there are certain parts of the business which are very highly confidential and whatever data information we have there is very price sensitive. So for that part of the organization, it is even more difficult to adopt AI. I'm not saying it's impossible. We are in the process, but we, like Pancham said, we need to put the right guardrails. For instance, a part of my business is advisory and financing, where we advise on large-scale business-critical transactions to our corporate institutional clients. And in doing so, obviously, because most of the events that we do cannot go out in the market before we actually make them public, there is a lot of sensitivity and there is a lot of governance that we need to internally follow, like need to know, private side controls, access restriction to data and whatever we are working on in terms of deal and transaction. So just to integrate that with AI adoption sometimes becomes very challenging, but even in that, I feel that there are, you know, we usually tend to use a very broad brush approach because we have our fears and apprehensions. It is important, yes, to use data responsibly for credible outcomes for everyone. But it is also not right to put everything in one bucket and say that we cannot implement any AI because it is all super confidential. So it has to be a good, fine balance, and the nitty-gritties needs to be understood.
Sure.
The governance needs to be put in place for sure.
Yeah. So that's quite progressive, I think.
Even if you've seen the whole banking industry go through a change in regulation, like 𝗬𝗍𝗃 was a pivot, and we keep evolving. So regulations are a very dynamic and evolving sphere, and what you don't want to onboard a technology and end up in reg debt. We struggle with tech debt right now. You don't want to have pile on reg debt and then you start clearing out those things as well. So evolving and working with the regulator is the right approach.
Yeah. No, completely agree with you. And I'll just follow that up with another question to you, Pancham. These solutions, do you see your clients wanting to use the solutions which you have developed for them, or do you see them developing their own solutions and coming to you and say, use this for servicing us?
I wish the answer was binary, but it is not. It's a hybrid, I would say. We are open to both build and buy, and we work closely with our clients depending upon their specific requirements, their infrastructure, and what their strategic business plans are. In terms of if the client wants to come to us for a tactical build, we will obviously partner with them. It's advisory, then obviously we'll encourage them to have a triage of risk from a risk perspective to see what their risk appetite is. How do we qualify the opportunity as a buy or a build? If we understand these things, we can work closely with the client. Sometimes the client also has a preference of a vendor they're already engaged with or a certain standard. So we do not want to disturb the apple cart. We actually encourage that we scale along with the existing solution and we'll add our modular functionality to it. So there is no one size fits all. What I've also felt is bigger established banks who have the infrastructure are more build banks, and they want to engage with us from a modular additive perspective. Whereas newer banks, and we're working with a very young notes issuance bank out of New York, they're still finding their feet, so they don't have so much of infrastructure. So they are willing to engage with us on a flexible solution, a managed services solution. So both spectrums are open, and like I said, we are open to working with them as their choice might be.
That's a very pragmatic approach. Swayta, you are on the other side. Do you prefer a build or a buy, and how do you create the business case for either?
Yeah, totally agree with Pancham. The answer is definitely not binary. So the way I see, or the way we take, any decision is taken, there are motivators and then there are non-negotiate things that you cannot negotiate on. So I can give you an example. Recently, we built a very large data repository in which most of the data, or all the data that we stored was all public data. But as we built that repository, the database became so large that we realized that to be able to access that data, we definitely need some kind of LLM capability. And then we started this whole debate on build and buy. But here, obviously, the motivator for us was that we have this data ready and we really need to access it like as of yesterday. So time was very critical. So although we really required some customization in what we wanted to look at, we could give away that customization because we would want to save time. So I think there the motivator was time. And again, there was a parallel example wherein some of the data that we had in a data repository we were building was a little sensitive. So while we also had the urgency to access that data, the non-negotiator there was the risk. So we could absolutely not give up on any kind of governance that could have been missed out, maybe if we could have just done a plug and play. So we decided that it may take time, and obviously because of that, we might miss on very good insights that we might be able to generate for our client and all of that. But risk was definitely a non-negotiator, and in that case, hence we decided to build the solution, which obviously will take time.
I just want to come in on both of the comments that Pancham and Swayta provided, right? The question that this panel is basically dealing with is the coexistence of scale and impact, right? And I think they have beautifully illustrated both just now, right? It is different strokes for different folks. Yes, of course it is, right? But that's true for any new technology. I think the fact is that it is not an either or anymore. Like within the same organization or indeed within the same, functional domain, it is highly possible that both coexist.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
And that's probably a paradigm shift that generative AI is enabling us to take, which means that you spread it thin and wide in terms of making everyone literate and beginning to figure out exactly how to transform the way that they do work on an ongoing day-to-day sort of basis. But then there will always be those big ticket risky items where you want expert attention, scaled teams basically taking a look at how to do it in a safe manner so that you don't put the franchise and the client at risk, right? So I think that this is going to be the trend to come.
Yeah.
Most of the times we see, organizations do not intend to work in silos, but they create silos. What this can do, and we've seen an example where we have a front-to-back solution, which is actually breaking silos from trade booking, going down to middle office, and then settlement. So it's one swift action, rather than trading system doing something to add on to the functionality, then operations thinking, oh, they've done this, now how do we deal with it? So breaking silos, working in unison, and creating a single straight-through processing flow is something this will allow.
Awesome.
I think from these conversations, one of my takeaways is the power is to look at the life cycle.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, indeed.
If we go back in the past, we looked at modules, right? The opportunity here is how do you look at the life cycle? Now, you can then decide what to change in that life cycle.
Yeah.
The other thing I take away, and Swayta, you made this point, right? There's always this balance of risk versus speed, right? But the reality is things are changing so fast that sometimes organizations are also realizing that you cannot always build that fast. And if you can't build that fast, then you are back to the table to have that balanced discussion and trade-off between risk and building fast, because both are very important in this topic, right? And in some of the things that we are talking about.
Yeah.
So that I see is a very interesting shift as opposed to these debates that we've had traditionally and in the past.
So your portfolio of use cases, risk management, and time to market. These three things are critical in terms of getting into buy versus build or going into a hybrid version of it.
Cool. Let's shift gears a bit, and I'll go back to the start of my career. I started my career, I'm quite ancient, so started my career in an era where we were helping organizations automate for the first time. They were implementing computer systems for the first time. And many organizations we found would go and automate their payroll system to start with. And as advisors, we started evangelizing the thought that, hey, automating payroll impacts the cost side of things. Instead of doing that, your first process should be Salesforce or Sales MIS, which should get automated because that will impact the revenue side. So fast forward to today, even with Gen AI, most of the use cases which I hear people talk about are impacting the cost side of things. So Swayta, I'll come to you, and then maybe Sudish to you as well. Can you give us some examples of where this is impacting the revenue line? Are we creating new offerings through this? How are the clients really experiencing the impact of this?
Thank you. I'll also go back. I'm as ancient perhaps as you are. I started my career in early 21st century, and someone introduced me that I also have retail banking experience. So at that time, my role was in a retail bank. And that was the time the advent of internet came about, right? It was a fundamental shift in the way we did things. Earlier, the parameter of success, for instance, in a retail banking branch was how long your customer queue is, because that would demonstrate how much business you've got, how many clients you've got. But obviously, the internet brought about a revolution, and then we had subsequently access to clients outside the bank branch, outside that 9 to 5 hours. And it also brought together a lot of client-customer data, which we are using as data as the new oil. We're using all of that now to generate so many rich insights on customers themselves. So I feel that the revenue-generating opportunity, which has been partly leveraged thus far, is definitely in using all the customer data to understand what are the consumption patterns, what are the preferences, and preempting their needs and providing more customized solutions to them. Because if you provide customization to a customer, which is what they are looking for in today's agent world, because you have all the data to know what they need, you will clearly see a benefit and an improvement in top line. So while I see that happening in parts and in certain organizations and processes, I feel we are just at the tip of the iceberg in terms of mining the data and leveraging and making the most of that opportunity for sure. The other area someone was saying is that the credit approval process, Sudish, I think you talked about it. So that is also what we are seeing rapidly change. We do get a lot more customer insights, turnaround in a very quick amount of time, and the approval process has definitely shortened. So while someone would say that, you know, this would have brought efficiency in the process, how does it add to the top line? But what I believe is, if the customer is able to access funding and the bank without much hassles, if the turnaround time in terms of getting credit is significantly reduced, the turnover of those kind of transactions will definitely significantly increase and indirectly for sure benefit your top line. But having said all of this, I really feel that, you know, we are not completely there yet. We have a lot more work to do.
Certainly. Sudish.
Yeah, so I agree with everything that Swayta said. I see two personas of organizations. One persona of organization is which are very product-led, product-focused. In that example, and retail could be one example, but there are many other examples, right? In those cases, what I'm seeing is there are actually AI-powered revenue-generating solutions, right? Which is out there in the market, that's being sold, and it is becoming the driver for the revenue coming in. And then there is the second persona of organizations which are very service-oriented. There, I think what's happening is it's early days. Okay. Because, and what I mean by early days is, it is more insight-based. It is trying to spot the opportunity. For example, I've heard about examples where organizations are looking and saying, here's my segment of clients. On an average, I sell 2 products to this client. How can I move that 2 to 4 products, right? So those are insights. Early days because it is data mining and then using those data mining to be more targeted, more intentional, to go after a particular segment of customers or to go after a particular segment of product or to go after a particular segment of market, right? So those are the 2 things that I see. Product-led, certainly more solutions. There's tangible in terms of revenue coming in. Yep. Service-led, I think the journey is more look operationally first and then start tapping the horizon in terms of what's possible from a revenue generation.
Amazing.
I've seen a use case of this. We had a case where the traders were issuing structured notes and you know, they were going thick and fast. Operations couldn't cope up with the confirmed issuance and there was a logjam. We provided a solution in terms of automation from the ecosystem. Now it's 2x because they can do the same amount of trades in 5 months and then the rest 7 months they're still going on. So it's definitely adding to the top line. So these solutions definite impact not just on the bottom line but on the top line. It's clearly visible.
Great example. Nilesh, anything that jumps to your mind?
There's that, and then there's the traditional mainstay of intellect, which is typically our, you know, investment banking, the business origination sort of activities that we essentially engage in. These could be in the terms of pitch books, it could be in the terms of, you know, papers that get essentially put forward to committees and so on and so forth. There are parts of that where you want to safeguard intellect, where you want to make sure that you leverage good talent who've invested time in developing expertise towards things other than just the gathering of data, right? Yeah. So if that alone can essentially get looked at, and this is one of the use cases that we are working aggressively on, and start to kind of look at that as a particular domain for injection of Gen AI, and then look to kind of really put to use that intellect towards forming meaningful decisions, then I think that starts to kind of become really powerful as well.
Awesome. Thank you. I think you know, we can obviously continue talking about this for a long time, but we are on the verge of our time limit. But you know, I'd like to end by saying that I came here as an optimist. I'm always an optimist. But hearing all of you talk, you know, I'm going even more enthused with you know, how progressively we are all thinking about it, the pervasiveness of this, and a good indication of the pervasiveness is the range of use cases, as well as the fact that we are looking at both bottom line and top line impacting solutions over here.
So Sandeep, if you permit me to make a quick comment, right? It's interesting, we are sitting in this panel, 5 of us humans, right? So that in my mind is human in the loop, right?
Yep, yeah.
But I don't know if Sameer is in the room. We should be thinking about panels where we have humans plus agents.
Yeah, or
Because-
maybe just agents.
Or maybe just agents, right? That's what the future is.
Oops, looks like we'll live to see that day soon. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for bringing a great audience.